1 Samuel, the 14th chapter. And we just going, you ain't got to read it, just get it read. We don't need it. 1 Samuel 14. Get your phone, your Bible, your tablet, whatever you use. We got some reading to do later. I just want you to have it read. Amen?
Amen.
All right. In 2003, there was a young man who was the first pick in the draft for his particular sport. He was a hometown kid. And as the hometown kid, they expected for him to be the savior. The one who would take that franchise as well as that city from decades of sports mediocrity and put them on the sports map. And as you look at the first 7 years of his career, he did just that. As you will see, he averaged 27.8 points per game, 7 rebounds, 6.9 assists. In 2003, he was the rookie of the year. In 2007, he was the scoring champ. In 2009 and 2010, he was the league MVP. During that time frame, he was selected to 5 All-NBA teams. And then he led a team to the finals in 2006. And his off-the-court accolades are just as strong as his on-the-court performance, because he has been a pillar in the community by the way in which he has given not only of his time, but of his finances and his influence to make an impact in the community.
Amen.
He's been a model citizen, a model father, a model husband. He's been a man who has stood up for social causes in our society. Instead of hiding behind his fame, he has put his fame out on a platform and become a voice for those who are disenfranchised. But in 2010, he had a decision to make. Would he remain in Cleveland and continue to play for the Cleveland Cavaliers? Or would he take his talents somewhere else? And the media storm that surrounded that was crazy. Everybody wanted to know, where is LeBron James going to play next year? Well, in July of 2010, he made an announcement. You probably remember it. It was called The Decision. It was on ESPN for the entire world to see. And at that time, he announced that he was going to be taking his talents to South Beach, to Miami. And when he did that and made that announcement, the people in Cleveland were devastated. How can the hometown hero abandon us? The guy from Akron, right up the street. How can he leave us and he has not delivered us that title yet? What's going on? So if you remember, they took his jersey and they burned his jersey. They took his shoes and they lit his shoes up. And everything they could find, they were trying to get rid of it. People like you and I found ourselves debating the merits of why can he be able to be a superstar and go to another team. Sports commentators talk bad about him, say your decision was weak. How can such a megastar like you leave and go and join with some other teams? The people who were applauding him before are now criticizing him. The people who were talking about how great he was and how powerful he was are now turning their back on him. And this had a profound effect on LeBron. Because he was this happy-go-lucky, super energetic person. Do you remember all the handshakes he had before the games, all that stuff before every game? Man, he was just this love lifestyle person, right? But then when that happened, he became this angry, bitter, scornful type person who believed that it was him against the world. He had this villain style mentality. Like, they can talk about me all day long, but I'm going to do what I want to do. He had these emotional scars. Yes. You know what I'm talking about? The emotional scars you get when you put your heart into something. You put your heart into people, and then those very same people turn their back on you. Those scars you get when you sit down and you deliberate and you deliberate and you deliberate, you come with what you think is a great decision. And then the people who were applauding you on Monday are now talking about you on Tuesday. He had those scars that came from the fact that there were people who he called a part of his inner circle who were now getting paid to talk about him on the TV. And I think that many of us, we can relate to what he's going through. Because we've been there. We have those emotional scars. We have went through the stress of having to make a decision. We went through the stress of making a decision that we thought was the right thing to do, only to find that the people who were in our inner circle turned their back on us because they did not like our decision. Amen. We've been in that situation where we did not want to, but we end up hurting somebody with a decision that we made. Amen. And as a result, it hurt us to see somebody we love who is hurt by a decision that we had to make. The right decision, let me put it like that, but an unpopular decision. Amen. The decision that we prayed about. And we know this is the right decision to make. But as we're making that decision, we know that there are going to be some people who are not going to like that decision. Amen. And as we make that decision and find ourselves in that particular spot, Miss Yvonne, sometimes you see who your true friends are. Sometimes you learn who that true ride and die partner is. But sometimes when you begin to make those decisions that don't feel in line with everybody else, you see their true colors. Amen. You see it. You see it. And as I look at my man Saul, I think he's struggling for some of this. Because when it comes to these decisions, as you find yourself hurting from making these particular decisions, it affects the way you make the next decision. Amen. Amen. Think about that. You were hurt because people turned their back on you because of the first decision that you made. Now you got to make another decision. Is this going to cost me as much as it cost me the last time? Am I going to go through as much this time as I went through last time? And as we sit here and we deliberate that, some of us don't want to make the next decision. Amen. We know we need to make the next decision, but we don't want to because we remember the pain that we experienced last time. But then there are others who get this jaded view of life. Because we say, if they're going to treat me like that, I got something for everybody the next time. And we make the next decision out of that anger and the bitterness and the unforgiveness that took. We have that villain mentality. And now we're making all of our decisions based off what happened the last time. For Saul, it was insecurities. And he's struggling with those insecurities, and as a result, it is stopping him from making the decisions that he needs to make. Amen. Amen. Let's dive into our text. Let's see what's going on here. Let me set the story up for us. If you guys remember from last week, the Philistines, they've gathered together, and they got 3,000 chariots, they got 6,000 charioteers, and they got an infantry that are outnumbering the sands on the seashore. Right. And they are mounted up, and they are ready to fight. So that when the Israelites, the Hebrews, they see this mighty army standing right there in front of them, they run and they begin to hide. They hide in the bushes, they hide in the caves, they hide in the thickets. Some of them jokers even went to the other side of the Jordan River to make sure that nothing would happen to them. Well, Saul and the rest of the army are sitting there waiting. And they have waited the appointed time. They waited 7 days for Samuel to show up. And when Samuel does not show up, what they end up doing is Saul makes a bad decision. He decides to take matters into his own hands. And he goes and he grabs the peace offering. He grabs the burnt offering himself, and he presents it unto the Lord. When Samuel shows up and sees this, he calls him a fool and tells him that the kingdom of God has been snatched away from him. Why? Because your heart was not in the right spot. He says, God is looking for a man after his own heart. Not a man who is merely in this for power. Not a man who's merely in this for the benefits. He says, I'm looking for a man after my own heart. Somebody who would chase me with all they got. Somebody who's not concerned about what's in it for them, but somebody who says, I love God. And I just want to be connected to God. I don't know how everything is going to turn out, but I know I want to be connected to him. And if what he says is true, that's what I'm going to work with. Amen. I want his heart. And his word says, seek me, and you shall find me when you search for me with all of your heart. And he wants your heart. That's it. He wants our heart. So a little bit of time passes. A man, Samuel, he just walks off the scene. He doesn't present the burnt offering for him. He doesn't present the peace offering for him. He does not pray for them. He does not give them advice. He just leaves them there, knowing that the Philistines are still there and they're still ready to march. Well, you remember Saul's son, Jonathan? Jonathan and his armor bearer, they begin to creep out of the camp. And they go towards this cliff that will allow them to see into the Philistine camp. And when as they're traveling there, Jonathan begins to say something. Look at what he says here. Look at verse number 6. 1 Samuel 14th chapter. Look at verse number 6. Then Jonathan said to the young man who was carrying his armor, come, and let us cross over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. Perhaps the Lord will work for us. For the Lord is not restrained to save by many or by few. His armor bearer said to him, do all that is in your heart. Turn yourself, and here I am with you, according to your desire. Jonathan said, behold, we will cross over to the men and reveal ourselves to them. If they say to us, wait until we come to you, then we will stand in our place and not go up to them. But if they say, come up to us, then we will go up, for the Lord has given them into our hands, and this shall be the sign to us. And they do just that. Jonathan and the armor bearer, they climb up on top of that cliff, and they allow themselves to be seen by the Philistines. And when the Philistines see them, they start laughing at them. Hey, the Israelites, they stop running, they stop hiding, they come out of their caves. Look at him. Hey, you, come down unto us, and let us talk to you. And Jonathan sees that as the sign from God. And Jonathan rolls up his sleeves, gets ready, and he goes down, and they begin to battle. He gets his Jackie Chan on. He gets his Bruce Lee on. He gets his Wesley Snipes on. He gets his Black Panther on. Look, he comes off the top rope with his people's elbow. Boom! And he just drops it on. And he goes back and he does a tag team. Brings in his armor bearer. And his armor bearer comes in and puts the little figure 4 on. Y'all remember that figure 4 when we was kids? Put the figure 4 on. The figure 4 on. And all that stuff Dusty Rhodes used to do. And Wahoo McDaniel. Jimmy Snook used to come off the top rope. Y'all remember that? Woo! Y'all didn't watch wrestling. Y'all watch wrestling, just like me. So they go, and between them two, just two, they defeat 20 of the Philistine men within a half-acre distance. Now, when my man Saul and the rest of the children of Israel hear about all this chaos that's been going on over there, they mount up too. And they get ready. And they begin to pursue the Israelites. But before we move on from there, this is just a good reminder of what God can do through two people who are united together. Amen. Think about it. It was just two of them, and they had a bunch of the other ones, and they defeated. But listen, I got something. But there are some of us who are arguing, who are not in cohesion with the very people that God has put into our lives to help us defeat the enemies. God has given us a spouse. Come on, man. To help us defeat the enemies in our lives. But we spend more time harping on the spouse's weaknesses, that we do not see the value in them. We don't see the blessing that God has given us in that mighty man, in that mighty woman. We just see what they do to get on our nerves. But can you take your nerves and put your nerves in your back pocket so that you can see the blessing that God has given you in that beautiful woman or that strong man of God? You prayed for him. And you prayed for him. And you prayed for him. And you prayed for her. And you prayed for her. And they gave him to you. And now all you want to do is criticize Jesus.
Go on. Amen.
But that's the person that God has given you to help you get to where you're trying to go.
Amen.
Some of us are children. And we have great parents. But we're so busy trying to be Mr. and Miss Independent that we can't see what our parents are bringing to the game. We can't receive the wisdom and the knowledge that our parents have for us. We are too busy trying to do our own thing. Amen. Some of us have been blessed with mentors, with friends, co-workers, cousins, siblings. And those siblings are a blessing unto us. But we're so busy looking at our enemy that we can't see the blessing that God has given us to help us defeat the enemy. I'm worried about what the enemy can do. Instead of worrying about, stop taking notes for a second. Instead of worrying about what me and my buddy can do when he turned his back that way. And I turn my back that way. And when the enemy comes his way, he starts knocking the enemy out. And when the enemy comes my way, I start knocking the enemy out. We can do some mighty things together. But I don't see the blessing. I don't see what God has given me. Because I'm looking at the enemy. I'm looking at what's going wrong. And how it's going wrong. I got this woe is me style mentality. But woe is me can't get me to where I'm trying to go to. That glass barrier is still right there. It's still waiting. It's not going to move from a woe is me mentality. The only way that glass barrier is going to move is if we get ourselves together and stop self-destruction. It's not going to move because it feels sorry for you. It don't move. It just stay right there. But if me and my buddy get together, put that flat up in there. If we get together and we start defeating the enemy, and we start beating the enemy down. Look at what it says in Ecclesiastes. I want you to read this word. Now read it, put it in your spirit. Two are better than one. Because they have a good return for their labor. But if either of them falls, the one who lifts up his companion. Let me just stop right there. If I fall by myself, trying to be Mr. or Miss It, I got all this pride, I don't need nobody's help. But if I fall and I got my buddy with me, my buddy can help me get back up. He can encourage me and say, there's more on the inside of you. Don't let this discourage you. Don't let this stop you. Don't let the enemy. Look, my buddy can begin to pray for me and can intercede on my behalf. My wife can be interceding on my behalf. My parents can be interceding on my behalf. But listen, I can't be trying to do this thing on my own.
You can't do it like this.
Are better than
Preach, Holy Ghost.
They have a good return for their labor. But if any of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another to
Thank you for the encouragement, Lord. Thank you.
Furthermore, if two lie down together, they keep warm. Now, how can one be warm alone? And if one can overpower him who is alone, two can resist him. Amen. I like this last part. A cord of 3 strings is not quickly torn apart. Because when 2 or more gather together in his name, there I am in the midst. And the Philistines only saw Jonathan and his armor bearer. But they didn't realize there was a 3rd strand there. They didn't realize that there was a 3rd cord there. They didn't realize that there was somebody else stepping in on their particular scene. Cord of 3 strings. Amen. So when my man Saul, hears about what's going on, he had these forward observers, these spies out in the land. And they came back and they reported unto him. And when they told him what was going on, him and his crew, they mount up. And they go and they begin to chase the Philistines. And as they're chasing the Philistines, they begin to slay them. And they're slaying them. And they spend all day chasing and slaying the Philistines. But they did not slay as many as they could have because of a decision that was made by Saul.
Amen.
Go back to your text. Go back. We're going to read Bible today. Look back at the text. 1 Samuel 14. Look at verse number 24. Look at what it says. Now the men of Israel are hard pressed on that day. For Saul had put the people under oath, saying, Cursed be the man who eats food before evening, and until I have avenged myself on my enemies. So none of the people tasted food. All the people of the land entered the forest, and there was honey on the ground. When the people entered the forest, behold, there was a flow of honey. But no man put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. But Jonathan, as he was gone, he had snuck out the camp, had not heard when his father put the people under the oath. Therefore he put out the end of the staff that was in his hand and dipped it in the honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes brightened. Then one of the people said, Your father strictly put the people under oath, saying, Cursed be the man who eats food today. And the people were weary. Then Jonathan said, My father has troubled the land. See now how my eyes have brightened, because I tasted a little of this honey. How much more if only the people had eaten freely today of the spoil of their enemies which they found. For now the slaughter amongst the Philistines has not been great. So Saul has made a bad decision. He has made a decision to put the people under an oath, allow the people to fast so that the army of the Philistines could be defeated. But that was not the only negative about that. Because the men were tired. And the men were worn out. And because of that, they couldn't pursue the enemy. But something else happens too. Look at verse number 31. They struck among the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ajalon. And the people were very weary. The people rushed greedily upon the spoil and took sheep and oxen and calves and slew them on the ground. And the people ate them with the blood. Then they told Saul, saying, Behold, the people are sinning against the Lord by eating with the blood. And he said, You acted treacherously. Roll a great stone to me today. So not only are the people tired, not only are the people worn out, but Saul has made a decision that has put a burden on the people, and now they are sinning because of a decision that he made. And you say, well, Pastor, he just asked the people to fast. He told them that they needed to fast. Don't we need to fast? Yeah. But just because we throw some last minute spiritual stuff on a decision that we made does not mean it was the right decision. Just because we throw some last minute ad hoc prayer on a decision that we had already made. We'd already made up in our mind what we were going to do. But then we say, oh, by the way, God, can you bless this decision.
This mess.
That I need you to bless. I know what I'm going to do. But I just need you to bless the decision that I already made. Just because we do that does not mean that God will honor that decision. Just because we decide we're going to fast 30 days and we already got our mind made up. Now we declare that we're fasting because we want to know what God wants us to do.
Amen.
But in our mind, we know what we want to do. So then we call on God and say, God, can you confirm what I'm going to do anyway? Can you empower what I'm going to do anyway? Can you bless what I'm going to do anyway? Just because we do that old kind of stuff does not mean the decision is going to be honored. Does that mean that God's going to step on our particular scene? And that's what Saul has done. Saul says, listen, I made up my mind what I'm going to do. But listen, I need God to bless my decision. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Go back to your text. Go back to your text. Go back to 24. Stay right there in chapter 14. Look at verse number 24. Now the men of Israel were hard pressed on that day, for Saul had put the people under oath, saying, cursed be the man who eats food before evening, and until what he says, he didn't say we, he didn't say the Lord, he said, until I have avenged myself on my enemies. So none of the people tasted the food. Y'all get that? Y'all get that? He says that they avenge myself. He says, y'all gonna go do my work and defeat my enemies. It was not a we anymore. It was not God's battle. But now it was his battle. And if you remember over in that 8th chapter of 1 Samuel, when they were begging for a king, and God told him that I'm going to give you a king. But this king is going to have you fighting his battles, not our battles. He says, I was already your king. I was the one that was already in charge. But you asked for this king. I'm going to give him to you. But his best interest, your best interest is not going to be his best interest.
Amen. Amen.
And we see this starting to manifest here with Saul. Because Saul is more interested in what's in it for him.
Amen.
And because he's more interested in what's in it for him, it's affecting his decisions.
Amen.
It's affecting the way he makes his choices. You see, we cannot allow our personal interests to override what God wants to do in us and through us.
Amen.
We can't allow that which we have a desire to do to influence our decision-making process.
Amen.
And for some of us, we don't see the decision as God's decision. We see the decision as my decision. And I just need God to put a little bit of ketchup and barbecue sauce on my decision.
Amen.
But then we wonder why my decision is not being blessed and it's not being anointed, because it's your decision.
Amen. That's right.
But if it was God's decision, then that decision will come back with power. Because his word does not return void.
Amen. Amen.
Think about Jesus now. Think about Jesus. Think about Jesus. When it comes to him and making decisions, what did he do? He went to the mountaintop and he began to pray.
Amen.
You remember reading in the Gospels, he pushed away from the people so that he get some time alone so that he could pray.
Amen.
He went to the Garden of Gethsemane, spent some time with God so that he could pray. He had a decision to make. Will I go to the cross for these sorry, no good people who don't believe in you?
Go on.
Or will I allow them to pass?
Go on.
He said, no. He made a decision.
Yes.
And you and I can do the same exact thing.
Amen.
We can make decisions that honor him. We can make decisions that empower other people.
Amen.
We can make decisions that encourage and strengthen people, not weaken people.
Yes.
It's all up to us.
Amen.
And it's all up to this thing right here.
Yes, it is.
Our heart.
Yes.
Why? What's so important about the heart? Because the heart is the essence of who we are.
Amen.
Think about that. Think about all those good times. They're all contained right here in that heart.
Yes.
Those fun times.
Yes.
That time when you were playing on the playground. That time when you were playing ball. That time when you overcome something you didn't think you could overcome.
Yes.
Those times in which you were successful. All that stuff is buried right here in your heart.
Amen.
But on the other end, the stuff that you've been through, that heartache, that frustration,
Yes.
that pain,
Yes.
that unforgiveness, that rejection, all that stuff is sitting right here in your heart.
Yes.
And as that stuff sits right there in our heart, it becomes the composite of who we are.
Amen.
So now, as I'm sitting here with that stuff in my heart, and I'm trying to make a decision, that stuff that's been there for a minute, that stuff that's been brewing there for a while, it begins to rise up. And that unforgiveness affects the way I make a decision.
Amen. Amen.
That anger on the inside of us affects the way in which we make a decision.
Yes.
That frustration on the inside of us affects the way in which we make a decision.
Yes. Amen.
That's what I like about LeBron. Because he had some more decisions in which he had to make. But he didn't allow the first decision and the fallout from the first decision to affect the next decision that he had to make. Does he remember the pain from the first decision?
Yes.
Does he remember the haters
Yes.
from the first decision?
Yes.
Does he remember all the people turning their back on him from the first decision?
Yes.
Yes, but he did not allow that to stop him from making the next decision and going on home to Cleveland and bringing in the championship that they desire. And he just recently went to Arlene's Lakers. And he didn't allow the past decision to stop the next decision. We can do the same thing, y'all. We don't have to allow our past decisions to affect our current decisions. Yeah, it didn't go the way we thought it was going to go in the past, but it does not have to turn out that way next time.
Yes.
We don't have to hide from making a decision. We don't have to run from it. We don't have to make a mean and angry decision.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
But that comes with maturity.
Yes.
Can I drop the M word on y'all?
Go on.
That word right there. I think sometimes we add that to the curse words. We don't want to hear maturity. We don't want to hear I got to grow up a little bit.
Amen.
We don't want to hear I got to put my big boy pants on. We don't want to hear I got to put my big girl pants on. We want to wallow
Yes.
in pity.
Yes. Go on.
But there comes a time in which we got to grow up.
Yes. Yes.
We got to mature.
Yes.
I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago.
Amen.
I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago. I'm not the same person I was 6 years ago. I didn't go through all this right here not to grow. I didn't go through all this. Now I'm finding myself 6 years later making the same decisions, the same mistakes. I went through that for a reason.
Come on.
I remember what I did wrong.
Yes.
I remember the heartache.
Yes.
But now, 6 years later,
Yes.
I understand how to handle my decisions.
Alright.
I know how to frame that thing.
Yes.
I know how to be tactful in the way in which I present my decision.
Yes.
I know how to pray unto my God before I go out there and do something I have no business doing. I know how to go on a fast before I do something I have no business doing. I know how to stop and have some patience this time and not go out and think I'm the one who's running some stuff. I know.
Hallelujah.
You better talk, Wallace.
I've grown a little bit.
Yes.
I matured a little bit.
Yes.
I still ain't sitting back no more. I'm not on Similac no more.
Now, get off that stuff.
I'm on T-bone steak. T-bone. T-bone. Yeah. Longhorn Steakhouse style. Can't say yeah. Because I'm mature. Some of us are on this side of that glass barrier because we have not matured.
Amen.
And because we have not matured, we keep making childish decisions.
Amen.
But when Paul says, when I was a child, I acted like a
Amen. Go
child.
on.
Thought like a child. We need to stop making decisions like children.
Amen.
We need to stop making decisions like children.
Amen.
It's time to grow up. Make some mature decisions.
Amen.
Knowing that my decision affects where I'm trying to go.
Amen.
I see where I'm trying to get to.
Amen.
I'm going to get through this glass barrier, but I'm not going to get through this glass barrier weak and immature.
That's right.
I'm not going to get through that glass barrier if I don't know how to make good decisions.
Amen.